From the Godrej DEI Lab, welcome to India Included. In November 2025, we teamed up with the wonderful folks at the Mumbai LitLife Festival to curate sessions that brought reading, writing, and literature into conversation with our vision for a more inclusive workplace and world. This episode is the recording of a conversation with Tarini Mohan, author of a brilliant memoir, Lifequake. She was in conversation with our own Preetham Gandhi Sunkavalli, Deputy General Manager Brand at Godrej Consumer Products Ltd.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. Welcome to the session. I've read the book and I've been in touch with Tarini for a few weeks. And it's so interesting because there are so many things that, you would think that an experience like this is not something you could relate with. But I'm pretty sure by the end of the session, that notion will change. And Tarini?
First of all, thank you all for being here. Thanks so much for coming. Before we begin, I would like to give a shout out to my niece, Inaya, 8-year-old niece who came all the way just to hear me speak. Thank you, Inaya.
So shall we jump right into it?
Yes, sure.
So would you like to tell us what the definition is and why you chose why you chose Lifequake for your title?
Yeah, okay, so like usual, I was listening to a podcast while biking one day, and I heard an interview with an author, Bruce Feiler, who was talking about his book Life in Transition or something. I forget the exact name. And he coined the term Lifequake to mean a period of major disruption in your life. It can be positive or negative, but it changes the way you experience the world and yourself. And that was true for my motorcycle accident in Africa in 2010. I had a traumatic brain injury, and it changed my whole life.
This book, as the introduction said, it is deeply personal, and you've not hesitated in sharing of course, the successes, but also the struggles and, the difficulties that you've faced over this journey. So can you take us through your writing process? How do you write about something like this? How do you be so honest and not sugarcoat? Because most of us have the tendency to do that.
Thanks for asking. The thing is that, first of all, it's a weakness of mine that I'm a bit too honest. I never hesitate before just saying the truth out loud, whether it's polite or not. But in this case, telling the truth felt like, after writing about trauma, felt like honoring reality. And so, even though it wasn't too, sometimes in certain paragraphs weren't exactly joyous to write. It's just the truth. And there's nothing I can do by trying to sugarcoat it. I mean, who does it benefit?
And you did mention in the beginning of your book that so much of what you've written are, they are a result of honest conversations that you've had with your loved ones, with everyone who was around you at that time. And, not only conversations, but also emails and text messages. And it's so authentic to actually read these conversations, these deeply personal conversations that you opened up to us. But I do want to get into the theme of the book. So you mentioned that the theme of the book is hope and love. And we will get into love later in the session. But for now, can you talk us through hope?
Okay, yeah. So hope can come in many different forms, not just an optimism, though that is the most common. For me, even though it looks like optimism, some friends say that I am the most pessimistic person they know. So I don't know how the truth is. But for me, hope manifested in actions, in me applying to Yale University after my severe traumatic brain injury. That's having the will and the determination to keep on living. So that's how hope manifested in me.
Now, it's very interesting what I'm going to do with the audience now. But how many of you, and apologies, Tarini, for asking this question, but how many of you find this inspiring? Can you please clap if you find it inspiring? Okay. Now we have a problem. Because the first conversation Tarini and I had over text is about inspiration and how we both do not like the term inspiration. We both have very strong views on inspiration, and I'd like it if you could share them.
I go on. I just want to say, but I fully acknowledge that it comes from a good place, and I'm very grateful for that. But at the same time, it reflects society's discomfort with engaging with disability as a concept, and I'm living with the ambiguity of difference. They just they just do not want to engage, and it's simpler to just sugarcoat and say, "Oh, that's inspiring." And people who don't know a thing about me and who are seeing me for the first time say, "Oh, I'm so inspired." Just because they see four wheels of my wheelchair, I'm like, "Are you inspired by wheels?" It makes sense. I just find that inspiring. Also flattens my identity.
Yes.
Like I'm an author, a development professional, a silly human, and a lover of rom-coms. I'm not always inspiring. And just depending on the day, I may be really inspiring, but that's beside the point.
Absolutely. And that's why we use person first language, right? We don't want to be defined by our disability, especially when folks use terms like differently abled, specially abled. People with disabilities are not different or special. They just have a disability. And you say persons with disabilities because we are persons first. We are multidimensional. She's a development professional. I'm a corporate executive. We have so much more that defines us than just by the fact that she uses a wheelchair and I use a cane. But yeah, let's get back into the book. So you've gone to Wellesley College. You were working with Morgan Stanley in New York City, living the life. You described your New York City life as something like Friends, the sitcom, and it's amazing because that's the dream, right? That is the dream. But you wanted to get into the development sector. You quit your high-paying job, making rich people richer, and you decided to move to Kampala, Uganda. And there you made the most of it. You were working on helping marginalized farmers. You had an active social life. And when you were going to a party like that, you along with a friend were on a boda boda. I hope I said that right. It's
Motorcycle taxi.
a motorcycle taxi. You both were not wearing helmets. The driver was. And what you think was an SUV hit you guys from behind
And drove off.
and drove off, hit and run. What happened after that?
Well, so immediately after, nothing happened for I don't know the exact time, like 10 minutes or something. Or or that is still remains unknown. But after a little while, some police officers are standing at a distance. Who had overheard the crash. They came and found 3 bodies, 2 unconscious and 1 man rather in pain. The driver. So it was a driver in front, me in the middle, and my friend at the back. So then an ambulance was called, and we were rushed to ER at the biggest local hospital, Malago Hospital in Kampala, where there was an extremely crowded ER, extremely crowded. As I hear from my friends, there was not a patch of visible space to be seen. There were patients lying on the ground, and they were like the ratio of nurses and doctors to patients was extremely low. So my friends came when they heard. My friend kept calling me, but our phones had flown off, and we fell. So at long last, a police officer found my phone, and he answered. My Ugandan friend, was waiting at the bar for both of us, and he was expecting me to answer and him to be. He was mad. He was mad. We were so late, and I assume he wanted to give me a firing, but luckily I only had he couldn't do that. So the police officer told my friend there's been an accident, and when my friend said, "Oh my God, are they safe?" and he said, "We don't know." Then we taken them to ER. So he and my other friend, my new friends of 6 weeks. I had only been in Uganda for 6 weeks. They rushed to the hospital, and they just stuck by me and my friend. From there, they just stuck by us. They didn't leave our sides.
Let's talk about Kampala itself. And there's a very interesting factoid that you wrote in your book, which is that half of the entire force of neurosurgeons in the country of Uganda was on your case at one point.
Yes.
And the total population of neurosurgeons in Uganda at that time was 4.
Yes.
Now it's 13. But can you tell us, I mean, since you worked there, can you tell us about the realities of medicine in Uganda and generally Uganda itself?
Oh, geez. If I had been there, if I had continued on with my plan of living there for 1 year, I would have much more knowledge about the country than I do at present. I just know the basics that all of you also must know. That things are bad. It's a very poor country, and just that the ratio of skilled doctors and nurses is very low.
So now let's get back to the aftermath, right? Your parents, your entire support system mobilized, and there are you've basically pieced together what has happened, the way your parents reacted, the way your partner reacted, the way the whole ecosystem, your friends, the way your brother was informed. So how did your family mobilize? Like what happened then?
So somehow my family, each of them responded in ways that are just quintessential of their personalities. The immediate reaction was the need to find out more about exactly what happened, and my father was making phone calls to all the people he knew to find out who knew somebody in Uganda who had connections in the medical field in Kampala, and stuff like visas and things. My mother was busy packing the suitcases, thinking of whether they would need a jacket packing all kinds of shoes and things like that. And of course, my brother, poor fellow, was partying in New York. And my parents, my parents didn't want to spoil his night of partying, so they decided to hold back. No, actually, they were trying to phone him, but he just wasn't answering because obviously he was in a loud bar. But then, luckily, my brother was with his UWC friends. So UWC is my school, United World College. So he was with my brother also went there because he's a copycat. So he was partying with his friends. And one of his friends is my friend's little sister. So she heard through her sister. And then my brother called my parents. So, but then my dad had already roused quite a network of people who had connections to somebody or the other in Kampala, and different doctors and nurses. And at that time, my dad was teaching one semester a year at Yale. And the president of Yale gave him so much support. He said, you go, you're not needed here because at such a moment, there's more you can do. You have other responsibilities. So he had the freedom to come to fly to Uganda.
One thing we should acknowledge, you should, I should, and most of us should in this room, is privilege.
Yes.
Right. The kind of connections your family had, the resources that they were able to mobilize in Uganda, the way they moved you back to India, back to Delhi. A lot of this happened because of privilege. So what's your read on privilege?
So my view on privilege is that, fortunately, it's just luck. Like who you have the privilege, who you have the privilege of the family you're born into, and I had the privilege of being born to my parents, who are extremely social, in a good way, not in the kiddie party way. And they have a very good social capital, and which they nurture. And not out of, we needed a network, but just because I think that it just comes naturally to be good to people. So I guess that's why people like them, except for when my mom. Okay, I won't. I'm just gonna go on and on. When I was a teenager, and I used to take dance lessons with my mom, and she was quite evil then. I just had to, sorry, Mama.
Tell us about your friends. Tell us about Pallavi. Tell us about your school friends. It was so nice for me to read about, because I'm also privileged that I have a group of very close friends who would be there for me throughout.
Yeah.
And they did play a significant part in your initial recovery. So
Yeah.
give us a peek into your friend group.
Thank you. There's nothing I love more than talking about, but the whole concept of friendship. Friendship has been the architecture of my healing, and not only my healing, of healing in general. Love and friendship. So, well, I'll first say that in terms of who all were there for me at the time of my accident recovery, initial recovery, also had a lot to do with geography, because many friends who I was not in touch with during my initial recovery, they didn't do much, not because they didn't want to, but just because they were so far removed. And if they had been closer, there's no question that they would have been there. And that's true for all of us with our friends who are close or far. So at the start, my friend Himali, she went to my school from class 3 onwards, and then both of us went on to UWC Pune for class 11 and 12, and then we both moved to the US for college. And then once we graduated, we moved to New York City. So, and she's an artist, and at the time I was working in finance. So we were treading very non-overlapping paths, but we still met up every weekend back then, because early 20s and nothing to do. So we met up every weekend to wander flea markets in Brooklyn and go for brunches and go to Himali's house for a home-cooked brunch. It was really fun. But then, at the time of my accident, she was in Delhi then, and she showed up like she was there a lot. Like the hospital almost became her second home. She would come just to give my parents relief from the hospital, just so they could go home and sleep. So much so that my dad started calling her number 2. Presuming I'm number 1. I don't know if it's me or my mom, but surely it's me. Yeah. So there was Himali, then there was my other friend Sahil, who is just a clown, and he just lightened everyone's moods, and he would come to visit me in my early recovery, and he would ask me what I wanted, and he would bring me hot chocolate fudge.
I love hot chocolate fudge.
Yeah, tell me about it. So one day, he asked me what you want, and he shouldn't have asked, because I said, I want hot chocolate fudge. And he brought me hot chocolate fudge, but then everyone lots of friends would come and see me, and everyone asked, what do you want? What do you want? And I would say hot chocolate fudge to everyone. So one day, my dad counted. You won't believe it, I had 13 hot chocolate fudges back to back. So my father I told my dad to, when he told me you're eating too many desserts, I had said, I don't believe you, because I didn't even have sweet tooth. So you're just fudgy, I guess. So then I told him, prove it. So one day he sat at the corner of my room, counting, and he counted 13, and he held out the paper with the number 13 written on it and showed it to me. And then from that day onwards, I have gone off sugar completely. I still don't eat sweets except for my birthday. Because, come on, with limited mobility, I'm too vain to be, I don't want to become obese. Is that politically correct? I guess not.
I don't know. My coping mechanism is still sugar and chocolate. I do want to ask about Nikhil.
You may.
Thank you. Would you like to tell us about him?
Yeah, okay, so Nikhil is my partner in my memoir in Lifequake, who I met in who I met when I started college. Yeah, I went to an all women's college, but Wesley is in Boston and MIT in Harvard are right there. So how does it matter if they're not on campus? So Nikhil and I met within 2 or 3 months because a friend of mine found a band with him, and one day I went for my friend's concert, and I saw this dashing, sharp guitarist playing a solo, and he was just so fine. I totally fell for him, and not only was he a musician, he was very smart. So we started going out gradually in 2004, first year of college, and we were still together by '08 when I graduated. And then we both moved to New York. And so we'd been together for 5 years. By the time, for 5, 6 years, by the time I had, by the time my accident, 5, 6 years, so I guess it was anybody's guess whether he would stay with me or not. I won't give it away.
And it's very interesting because one movie I would strongly recommend is this movie called Sparsh. It's a 1980 movie with Nasiruddin Shah and Shabana Azmi. Nasiruddin Shah is visually impaired principal of a blind school, and Shabana Azmi is a widow. And so much of it, and the reason I related to it so much, and the reason I pretty much broke down every 15 minutes while watching the movie, was because of not only the characters, but also the insecurities of Nasiruddin Shah that come out really well. Because you don't know, is she with me because she actually loves me, or is she with me because she's sympathetic and she just wants to help and she wants to be nice? And and there are articles. There's another brilliant article called "I Need a Lover, I Don't Need a Nurse." And that's what makes this so interesting. And I would strongly urge you to read the book, to get the entire story and to know what happened. I don't think there is enough representation of love, at least in this context, on print. So thank you so much for sharing that story. I don't think it would have been easy for you to reflect on everything and put it down.
Luckily, Nikhil was great. He was reading every draft of my memoir, and he was totally fine with me using his real name. But then I decided to change it anyway, just to protect him. So yeah, Nikhil's not his real name.
Okay.
But we're still like best friends.
Cool. So let's change gears a little bit. Let's literally, I mean, let's talk about chairs, and let's talk about how you essentially built your life back together. How you became productive, you became independent. So one thing is, usually with stories like this and with many such stories, people assume that it's all about medical science. It's all about the treatments. It's all about what doctors can do. But of course, there's so much more to it, right? So would you like to tell us about the years that you took essentially to build back?
Yeah, that's a very insightful question. Okay, so the acute phase of my recovery, in the acute phase, yeah, it was very medical. and it relied mostly on neurologists and physical, occupational, and cognitive therapists to get me up to a certain standard. But then, after a year and a half, when it became obvious that I had reached a certain plateau, I guess, and the secret is that there is never a plateau. It keeps even if the slope is very gradual, like 0.1 millimeters, it keep improving. So never give up hope, but also keep trying.
So what's interesting is that you've gotten therapy here in India as well as in the US. And one thing that even I've noticed, I've also taken quite a bit of orientation mobility training, independent skills training in India and the US. And the US really emphasizes on, while India does, of course, emphasize on skill building, the US emphasizes on independence. And one great example of that you've quoted in the book is the skill to hook your bra one-handed.
Yes.
So, would you like to tell us about what independence means to you and how your life in New Haven really, you valued that so much because of the independence there?
Yeah. So New Haven was mostly about. I moved to New Haven because my dad was when my dad was teaching one semester a year. So we went back and forth back then from New Haven, Delhi, New Haven, Delhi. So then I would have therapy there and here. So the difference was that New Haven was about anonymity and independence, while New Delhi was about familiarity and care. And navigating both of these taught me something different. It taught me not independence or skills, but it taught me interdependence. It taught me how to thrive with people, with people helping you, people helping you be independent.
So you did quite quickly. You were laser focused that business school is where you wanted to go, and you did fill out your essays, and in fact, you did get admitted to Yale in 2012, but you chose not to go ahead. You chose to defer, and you chose to work part time with the organization that you worked for previously before the accident. What was going through your mind when you took such decisions?
Yale, it was an amazing experience just because of the flexibility that the school showed. They told me when I first decided to defer. Sorry, when I first realized that I was when I would I first thought I would have to decline. So I summoned the courage to decline because originally I thought I would recover in 1 year. I would be hopping, skipping, jumping. Because I had never ever experienced the recovery taking so long in anyone. It just shows the positive of my own experience. So when I told them, and I told Yale, sadly I have to decline because I need rigorous therapy. They said, nothing doing. You go focus on your therapy and come to us when you're ready and hold your seat. So that kind of flexibility is just mind-boggling. It opens so many doors. It opens doors. It opens doors and it fulfills individuals' potential.
one aspect that happens in elite in Ivy League MBAs and most top tier MBA programs is that the curriculum is extremely rigorous, and we have study groups, and I've also faced this. You don't want to be perceived as a drag, and whether people perceive you as a drag or not, you might judge yourself. And typically this is something we call internalized ableism. So ableism, kind of like casteism or racism, essentially means that so-called able-bodied people are superior because they have no deficiency. Now, you might think that regular people think this way, like non-disabled people think this way, but a lot of us have what's called internalized ableism, where we believe that we are slowing the team down, that we might not be the asset that we think we are. And this really comes to the fore in an MBA environment, especially with a group where everyone has to pull their weight. So could you tell us about your experience in SOM and how you felt with your
SAM.
peer group?
SAM, School of Management.
School of Management.
Yeah, thanks. So my experience with ableism, my experience with internalized ableism, only, first of all, I reckon I came across the term only after I finished my book. I came across the concept and the term, and then I reflected and I was like, oh, I guess at these times when I refused to go for tutoring, for peer tutoring in school, in college, in university, I thought my having to request support would mean that I'm lesser. But there's nothing wrong with anybody asking for support. It does not make you less. In fact, knowing that you need support, like all humans do, I guess that doesn't make you less. So, and also, internalized ableism, while most people with disabilities have some internalized ableism, ask yourselves to, is there some part inside you that makes you think that people with disabilities are, do you think of people with disabilities as somehow less than you? You don't have to say anything right now, obviously. I'm not going to interview you, but ask yourself that. And the truth is that I saw myself as less than, and so it was clearly internalized ableism, and it's going to be a work in process.
It's very much a work in process for me as well. So as we get to the conclusion of the session, I'd just like to know about your post MBA life and what you're up to now.
Okay, so after I graduated, I was always intent on working in development, but then I decided that it makes sense for somebody like me to work in accessibility. So for 1.5 years, I was working on accessibility in higher education. But I recently accepted a full-time job in public health, and and their embracing of disability, and at the same time choosing another path. It feels like embracing the label of disabled, while at the same time not being boxed in by it. And that feels like real progress to me. So yeah, my hope is that I still find some time while working to continue writing.
Thank you for listening to India Included. If you enjoyed this episode, tell us. Please subscribe or follow and leave a rating and review on the podcast app you're listening to. To find out more about us and the work we do, visit godrejdeilab.com. You can find us on Instagram and LinkedIn at Godrej DEI Lab. Stay tuned for more.